Silo continues to roll on. We just had episode 6. I don't think this episode was the craziest thing in the world, kind of a calm down, especially from last week and where the momentum was heading. But I do believe there were some important details in this episode that we will have to remember for the next couple of episodes. We were over halfway done with Silo, 6 episodes in. So let's get into this episode 6. Starting it off, I usually would say the big storylines, but I don't really know what the big storylines are. I mean, we have Daniel and Helen, their story kind of got interesting, but this was just another episode of like moving them from point A to point B with some interesting stuff in there with their character developments, but nothing really like groundbreaking news. This is a big Camille and Robert episode where they're seemingly on the ends or on other ends and they know it. We'll have to talk about that. And then this is a big kind of side character episode with Billings, Shirley, and Knox having a big part of it. So we'll get into all that. Starting with the beginning of the episode, Camille. So we remember last episode we had Camille and Robert kind of do the stare off, and I was really confused on I wasn't confused, but I was curious. That's a better word for it. Does Camille know what Robert's been up to? Running around, hanging out with Bernard. Obviously, she doesn't know Bernard's alive quite yet. Obviously, or most likely, hanging around with Juliet, hanging around with the crew of misfit toys. Lucas Kyle, Patrick Kennedy, those type of people. So starting off this episode, Camille boots Robert out of the search party. So they're obviously searching for Juliet. They don't know where she is. She went down to lower levels. Obviously, Robert knows where she is, but Robert's playing appearances with Camille, being like, "Can I help you?" And Camille's like, "Nah, you got to get out of here. Go spend time with our son. We're about to put vitamin D in the water. You're gonna forget who he is." But that's for later on in the episode. But yeah, she also asked people to keep an eye on him, which is the suspect part because we didn't know for sure that she was locked in on him, but now she wants to track his movements. So I think that's been a big kind of storyline of this season is the kind of failing marriage of Camille and Robert. It seems like the love is really lost between the two. They always had a strong relationship, at least in the first 2 seasons. And ever since Camille became the head of IT, it's really gone downhill with them two having to sort of split it off, and we just see them deviate even more and more. Now Robert's like completely on Juliet's side, and the kind of anti-Silo movement, while Camille is the Silo movement, trying to follow through with what the voice is telling her to do. So interesting dynamic. We'll have to see how that ends up. Obviously, they have the son involved too, which the son steals credits this episode, which I thought was an interesting add to the show. I don't know what that's going to lead to, if anything, but it kind of just shows like there's no really parenting going on right now, maybe because they seem like good parents, but I don't know if they're obviously very occupied, both of them, with what they're doing right now. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Juliet wants to talk to Camille with no cameras. Don't love this. I don't like the idea of actually going to the AI. Like I don't trust the AI voice of this all powerful thing that Lucas Kyle knows, and it can just kill you instantly. Why are we going to go talk to that? Like I feel like we can try and find a workaround with that, but they need to go. They want to go to the other silo and find how they cut the power or cut the what's the word? I always forget what they call it. The ending thing, the thing that can end them all. So they want to figure out how to cut the power to that, cut the pipe off, and then when that pipe's cut off, they'll be safe to live. Obviously, a safeguard. That's the safeguard. They want to get rid of the safeguard, figure out how they did it in the other silo so they can do it in their silo, get rid of the safeguard in their silo, but they're trying to like maneuver it through this plan through the AI, which I think the AI might be able to read this bullshit. The AI has been around for a long time. I don't know. I don't trust that this voice is really going to have the best intention in there, but Juliet wants to do it. I feel like Juliet's always been bold and always, it never is like trying to hide what she's trying to do really, but besides when like the whole silo is chasing after her. So I don't know. I don't like this plan, but it's what she's going to do. So back with Helen and Daniel. I've actually enjoyed, I've said in a lot of my reactions in the episodes, I've actually enjoyed this storyline. I feel like this has stagnated just a little bit in the last 2 episodes. I feel like, if we're going to get to a resolution by the end of season 3 here, which I'm doubting more and more by each episode, we're going to move this along. But I think this is going to might be a 2 episode or 2 season arc ending with season 4. Anyways, Helen, we know in her car she still has the Pez from Daniel, or in her purse, I believe, after she patches him up. So that's nice. It was just a date, or it wasn't a date, as she always says with Daniel. But I can definitely see these two getting together romantically. It's just going to be what really clicks them together. I feel like this would have been a good episode for them to like kiss or whatever. But I don't know. I'm trying to find love for these two. And I'm always saying, get rid of love in my shows, get rid of love in my movies. But these two, I'm down. Let's see Haniel or Dellen, whatever the streets are saying. I don't know if they have a ship name for them, but I'm down. Let's get it. But there's these little moments of them being romantic back and forth as this car is just self-driving them this whole episode, which is still a crazy concept. I'm curious how they did that. If they want to explain that, that'd be cool. But if they don't, then okay. So back with the Billings and Hank, and maybe this is a reason why this episode was a little slower in my opinion, but I've been a little anti Orla Kent storyline this whole season, but it's been kind of the main third storyline that we've just are dealing with. And Billings and Hank Hank's involved now. I like Hank. He's kind of like the middle ground between like the revolutionist and Billings. He's like still got some like moral code or whatever. But they go to Mark, the guy in the wheelchair, who I was actually praising a couple weeks ago. I think this guy's a funny character, but he's very spicy. He reads Billings to filth. Hank's like kind of in touch with all these people at the lower levels. They all like Hank, but they don't really like this new guy getting involved. So Mark's a little spicy with him, and I know he's got to make a deal to find out who would know about these relics, and they find out that it's actually Knox's father. So this is another interesting layer to add to the cake we're building. I don't know what I was going for there, but this is another layer to add with Knox's father being a person of interest. We don't know anything about Knox's father or Knox's parents, so that's going to be an interesting development throughout the rest of this episode, maybe the rest of the season. Back with Juliet. She gets her conversation with the voice, and she frames this as wanting to get the kids that live in the other silo, which is a fact. There are those kids there that were kind of annoying, if I remember correctly, but they're there along with Solo, and the voice denies her to go get the kids. Doesn't seem like a good idea. We're offering percentages. It's a computer, so it doesn't have that human feel to it. And she offers, if you let me go get the kids, I'll drug myself and we'll drug the kids. They don't remember that they were in a different silo. Now, if I was the AI, I'd be like, hell no. This is opening a whole different can of worms. People are going to see them come in, and it's going to be even as docile as I think some of the common people are right now in the silo. I think this is still a bad idea for the AI. I don't think the AI is like trying to scheme how to make this a good idea for itself, and I'm not sure you're going to get there. To be honest, I think this is just a bad for the AI. There's no really positives in this. You have a perfectly working silo now. What's adding all these outsiders going to do, and then letting people go outside? We'll get into it later what the AI thinks is going to happen, but if I was the AI, I'd be like, no. But from my perspective, of course, I want people to leave the silo, go snag those kids and Solo and bring them over. But we'll have to see how that goes, if it ever even the attempts happens. So now Billings and Hank, armed with the knowledge that Knox's father is this like relic dealer and was dealing in that space, they go to Knox, and Knox has a crash out. I didn't like this out of Knox. Knox is usually a pretty like level-headed character. I feel like, especially the last couple seasons, like Shirley's been kind of the one who's like tempered, at least in season 2. I remember Knox is like, let's chill out a little bit, but he has his moments too of crashing out. But this is one of the biggest crash outs ever. He's like, get the fuck out of my face. He's pissed at Billings, and of course Hank has to be the middleman again. There's something more going on here for sure. It doesn't seem like Knox and his father ended on a great relationship. Spoiler alert, his father is dead, that we learned in a couple minutes. So, yeah, I don't know what happened between him and his father. I don't know if there's going to be a backstory to that. I don't know if we need the backstory to that, but it seems like there's a rocky relationship there. He doesn't want to be pressed on it, but eventually he will, go and help Billings after Shirley's, sort of intuition, or sort of Shirley's advice, go help out Billings and Hank, come on. So back to Helen and Daniel. We learn more about Helen's journalistic fraud, which I don't know why I'm sighing, but like it's not journalistic fraud. She actually gave up her career to protect her source. So working in Washington, D.C., it's very, I'm sure everything is there. You do is recorded with a, very pen the second you do it. So she was running around getting these sources about congressmen and congresswomen doing drugs. Turns out one of them was speaking on the Speaker of the House, which got her in major trouble. Like, who's your source? Who's your source? People were talking about it. People were tweeting about it on social media and all that stuff. And yeah, the source was this woman, and they somehow found the source without her actually saying it. She was trying to protect it, but it became obvious who it was. So she had to come out and say, hey, I lied about this. I fabricated this story to make it interesting for clicks. And that's really noble of her, but she blames herself, saying, I should have had a better better way to protect this person, but it doesn't seem like there really was a better way. They just did some detective work and figured it out. So I don't know what she could have done better. But yeah, that was noble of her to really give up her career as we see her work with these like shitty like TMZ level outfits now. Well, she got fired, but to give up her career at the Post, I think as the Washington Post, just to protect her source, that's pretty noble and really what a journalist should do. I feel like journalism nowadays, I don't want to get into something I'm not like super caught up on, but I feel like, I don't know, there's not like these level of journalists who are very integral like that. The integrity of journalism is leaving us. But Helen has that integrity. So she is a good person, guys. She didn't commit actual journalistic fraud. She just didn't protect the source enough. So we'll have to see if her career even goes anywhere in this. I feel like, her days of reporting are most likely done, probably just like using ties from her reporting days, if anything, in the next couple episodes. Because I feel like her and Daniel are about to, we'll talk about it at the end, but they're about a side quest life, and we have to remember Daniel's a congressman that's been gone for like a couple of days, so there's going to be, they might have to return to life, but I doubt Helen's like returning to reporting, if anything, so who knows. So Shirley and Knox, big development. Congratulations, guys. They're having a baby. And Julia is actually the one to come up to them and say, hey, we need you guys to be the ones to go get the kids from 17 or 18. I think they're 18 and they're going to 17. And Shirley's like, or Knox is like, hell no, I got my baby coming, man. I'll go alone. And Shirley's like, come on, I'll go. But they both want to go together at the end of it. A little conversation there, but yeah, respect for them for having a kid. Don't know how that's going to work if the system's back to like allowing kids. I remember in season 1, in the first episode with that woman who plays the girl in The Office. Yeah, I don't know if like we're allowed to have kids, especially these two rebel rousers. I don't know if they're gonna allow them to have kids or have a kid, but maybe it's just everyone said, you can have a kid now. Ask the AI voice if they can do it. I don't know how that system's working, but maybe they can have it off the grid. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but Shirley is pregnant with a baby. Let's see how this works. So finally, we get to the Camille and Robert confrontation. It's been kind of building the last 2 episodes. And Robert's like, we gotta do this for our family. And Camille's like, no, I gotta trust the AI voice. You don't know shit about shit. And Robert's like, let me talk to the voice, I think. And she's like, no. Um, and then she goes to the voice, and the voice is like, stop talking to me. You're so frustrated and angry after your conversation with Robert. Like, I can feel your breath is starting to slow down. Let's talk like real humans, even though I'm an AI voice. Like, be chill. But yeah, I don't know where this is going. I honestly don't have a prediction right now. I think maybe something happens to the kid, and like Robert tries to save the kid or something. Like, I feel like Camille is set up to like realize she's being a dumbass with the voice and like circle back to humanity. And I don't know who can do that if Robert's not doing it besides her kid. Maybe with Robert, I think he might be a sacrifice. And remember him taking that little sidestep last episode. So I'm curious to see like, does he just take like, is he at risk of like dying early and then he like sacrifices himself early or something? I don't know if Robert's making it to the end of the season, yo, to be honest, because I feel like we've avoided deaths of some characters. Not that Silo's a show that like calls for a death count, but I feel like at the end of the season, if they try and like escape the silo or something like that, someone's definitely gonna have to go down. They already faked us out with Bernard. Like, there's not really a point in just killing him. And then I don't know, like Orla Kent died this season, but I'm trying to think like who else would be risk. Shirley's got the baby coming, so maybe Knox dies to like for a dramatic effect. But I don't know. I don't know if someone will even die. Like, I feel like the story is too interesting for people to just die randomly for shock value. So I want to like be like, who's gonna die? Like it's like a Walking Dead episode. But I could see Robert potentially not making it to the end of this episode. Maybe circle back in this moment later in the season. But yeah, Camille's having a hard time with the voice. She's just locked in with that thing. Like, she's not going anywhere with that. Unfortunately, we're 6 episodes in. It's the same old story. She just listens to it, which makes sense when you have the threat of the safeguard above your head and like you think this thing is all knowing. We've seen it in our modern society now with people trusting AI, chat GPTing everything. It is what happens. So we'll have to see how that develops. I feel there's an arc coming of her like circling back on it, and realizing humanity matters and life matters and we're so awesome and we don't need these AI voices and we can outlive them and kill the safeguard. Um, but we'll have to see how long that takes and if that ever happens. So, or if she dies in the process, she dies of I was too committed to the voice and I'm an idiot. That could happen. So Billings and Hank, they go to the cameras, which, the cameras are supposed to be limited. Billings is like, hey, this is not part of the pact anymore. But they look at the cameras through that like second in command judicial lady, and they find that Glenda, what is she? She was like the second in command that was supposed to be, but she wasn't. She was in two places at the same time. She was both on the mines and on the stairs, where that would not be possible in the silo when there's, you have 10 minutes in between those two scenarios and you have to go up like multiple flight of stairs. So Glenda becomes a person of heavy interest right now in this case. Not much to this story. Like, I don't care about Glenda. I don't really care about Orla Kent. I'm more curious about like the overarching stuff we found out about like the silo being on critical supply, which Billings fills in Hank on this one about like light bulbs and stuff like that. I think that's more of like the long lasting impact of this story. Once they find who killed Orla Kent, is this going to lead to like them trying to like smoke out these like people who are stealing everything from the silo? I don't know where the storyline's going. Once again, I think last week was kind of interesting with that, but this week kind of was like, okay, now we're just doing the murder case again, which like I don't particularly care about, but it's not like boring TV. So it is interesting. I wonder how Glenda pulled this off of being in two places at once. Is she like, does she have twins? Is there a secret twin situation going on? We'll have to see what happens with that. So Juliet goes back to the voice and says, if you don't want to allow Shirley and Knox, which is actually a fair thing by the voice because those people keep the freaking mechanical running. Those are the top two dogs in mechanical. You can't just risk them out there. The silo would fail and everything would die because you don't have the top two mechanical people. Even though you have that like, protege guy, I think, who's like the third in command now. I don't know, but he probably can't run it. I think the guy who helped Juliet repair the generator, I think, died. So this guy, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in mechanical. It doesn't seem like we can replace that right now. So that actually makes sense. She's like, let's do Lucas, Kyle, and Patrick Kennedy, which for the AI, that's got to be music to the ears because the AI thinks that they don't want to even make it to the silo. So if you kill off these two like rebels, like big rebel people, where Patrick Kennedy was kind of like the face of the rebellion at the end of season 2, and Lucas Kyle was like digging around in the safeguard in the basement and stuff and knows too much, send them out there. Yeah, we'll rip that little tape from the suits and they won't make it. So for some reason, AI doesn't think they'll make it, which is curious to me because we did see Juliet clearly make it back and forth. But I am curious how they're planning on getting the kids up and out because you have to make like probably 6 or 7 of those suits. Probably, yeah, because you have the 2 for Lucas and Patrick, and then you have like 3 or 4 kids and Silo over there, or Solo. So I'm curious what will happen with that. But yeah, for the AI, this has got to be music to your ears. We keep the mechanical people and send these 2, rebellion leaders out the door and see you later. We won't see you again. Now, I think my prediction is if these 2 actually were to leave the silo, I think Patrick Kennedy might be dead. I don't know what his story really is at this point, but Lucas Kyle, I think will make it because he has too much stuff going on. Just my opinion. If this happens, I don't even know if this will end up happening. It might just be like, I don't know. But the big kind of ending we get is with Danielle and Helen. So they've been driven this whole episode by this self-driving car. They're in the back seat, and Helen's like, when no one sees us in the back, when no one sees anyone driving the car, they'll call the police on us, and then the police will help. And finally, the police are here, right? But no, it's an escort to this hangar. And they get out of the car, but there's an old shady man who I don't like the look of and the feel of. He's in the sidecar. He's like looking at them through the car and the escort. They get to this hangar, and who walks out but that senator from the Iran committee? And she says, Daniel and Helen, do you want a chance to save the world? So I'm curious to see how that goes, and we're definitely going to learn more about the beginnings of the silo. I'm super excited to hear about that. So great way to end this episode, and finally, hopefully we're getting we need a Daniel and Helen episode at this point. And that's crazy to say because I know Juliet's our girl and stuff, but like I'm so curious about this storyline. I feel like they've done a really good job of making this intriguing, even though the last couple episodes are a little slower on that end. But yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens with that. Daniel and Helen may be groundbreaking on the silo, so we'll have to see what goes with that as we end off episode 6. Solid episode. Definitely won't be like this was my favorite episode of the season or least favorite episode. It's just kind of another episode to get us from point A to point B. As we lead into the last 4 episodes of Silo Season 3, it's been a solid season so far. My favorite character of this episode was kind of tough to choose. I went with Billings. I just like the way he investigates. He's always got a calm head. I can just give a shout out to Billings. He's awesome, and I've forgotten his name the last 4 episodes. So we're going with Billings for favorite. Least favorite, I think every episode besides one, she's got it. It's Camille. Stop listening to that fucking AI voice and letting it ruin your life or rule your life. You've got a kid, you've got a husband who cares about you. Stop letting this AI get in your head. But that is what it is. That's where we leave off episode 6. Coming up in the Dubcast tomorrow, we got House of the Dragon, episode 8, the finale. I'll be posting a little short video after the finale with my thoughts, always on Shorts and TikTok. And then later in the week, I'll reconnect with some guests for some longer talking about the finale of season 3 of House of the Dragon. In terms of movies, we've got a bunch of movies coming up now that that time slot's going to be freed up. We'll be posting more movie reviews. I've got Drive coming up. I've got Blue Velvet coming up. I've got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming up. I've got Long Walk coming up. So there's going to be a lot of older movie reviews. I looked at the list for new movies. I'm not interested in anything coming out in really August, or it's going to have to wait till September where we're going to see like Prime Time. I think like Clayface is coming out in October, so we'll catch up with that. And then with sports, we got UFC 330 this month. Actually, I'll be connecting with Shane next week for that as we see Islam Makhachev and Ian Machado Gary do battle, and a bunch of other fights on that card. And then we'll be back in a couple of weeks with NFL Week 0, by giving our predictions for the season, so that'll be fun, and then we'll get back into the groove of doing a weekly stream on that. So tons of stuff happening in the Dubcast. If any of that stuff sounds interesting, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and of course we'll be covering Silo until the end. Only 4 episodes left of Silo, so maybe some other TV shows thrown in there as well. We'll have to see about that. So as always, be easy.